Welcome, everyone, to today's special edition of EdPost Live. I'm Maureen. I'm your host, Maureen Kelleher, and my guests today are Charles Luter and Stephen Montgomery. They are two Minneapolis Federation of Teachers members running for union leadership roles as a part of the Coalition for Truth, a diverse slate of teachers running for leadership of the Minneapolis Teachers Union. Voting takes place this week and it wraps up on Friday. Charles and Stephen, I'd like to give each of you a chance to tell us who you are, what you teach, and how you got interested in union leadership. And we'll kick it off with you, Charles.
Good evening, Maureen, and thanks for having us on today. My name is Charles Luter. I teach at Franklin Middle School in North Minneapolis. I teach special education of 6th to 8th grade students. Uh, I got into I had a desire to run for union leadership based off just some things that I saw that I didn't feel were right. I didn't feel like the representation that we were receiving as union members was what it should be. And at a point, just figured that I should extend myself and try to be a part of the change that needs to happen in Minneapolis.
Stephen, tell us about yourself and where you teach.
Yes, thank you for having us on. First off, I appreciate the space and opportunity. So my name is Stephen Montgomery. I am a social studies teacher at Olson Middle School, North Minneapolis. And like Charles, the strike kind of sparked my interest in being a part of the union. I just felt overall during that time, I sensed so much adversarial energy, so much miscommunication, lack of transparency on both sides from our district and our union. And a lot of times our sites being, on the north side, and having a lot of the disconnection from leadership and the disconnection from benefits of our students, encouraged me to, try to be a voice to spark change, and also allow us to get a seat at the table when we talk about how can education benefit all students.
Thank you. That's important. That's important fodder for conversation and action. Let's talk for a minute before we get deep in the teacher strike about your day-to-day experiences as Black men in classrooms in Minneapolis. Tell us a little bit about how being a teacher of color affects your day-to-day work, and I'll open it to either of you.
I guess I can start in on that. For me personally, it gives me an opportunity to give the students what I didn't have. I'm a product of a single parent family. My mom worked a lot, so I didn't have a lot of male role models around. So for me to be in this position and be afforded the luxury, the opportunity, the blessing, the impact to be a potential positive impact on young people's lives is really something that I've always valued. My mom was a social worker, so I learned from her how helping others and giving of yourself can be really impactful. Um, and in my day-to-day teaching, I share this story with, or share this little piece of what I do. I call all of my students my little brothers and little sisters. And I do that so that we feel as if we're family, because in families, we have our ups and downs in families, but at the end of the day, we come together because we are family and we have a common goal. So just for me, it's important to have that impact on students, to be a representation of just a small piece of who or what they could be, and just to encourage them to dream, to encourage them that they can achieve their goals, to have goals, to teach them how to make a plan and follow through on a plan and have steps that lead them towards success of that plan, are all things that I see every day. The relationships that are built with the students goes beyond uh, just seeing these kids in school and seeing them during the after school program. When I live in this community, so when I go to the Walmart or to the grocery store, I'm running into the parents and students that I see all week long. And that's just a really good feeling. I think the students have a better understanding of who I am. And I'm afforded, again, the blessing of actually being a part of the entire child. I can interact with the students in and outside of school. So for me, just being that role model for our Black students and being that encouraging voice in their ear and being that leader that can help them get through tough times and that's understanding and that has empathy for their situations, because our children come with various things that schools are not necessarily equipped to deal with, but we take them on and we try to do the best we can for our students. So for me, again, just to sum all of that up, is the impact that we can have on young lives. Every day I see the benefits of having teachers of color in front of students of color.
Yeah, that was beautiful, Charles, and I can agree with so much of that. And I think for me, I like to think of myself as an extension of my students' families, right? Like I am the person in this spectrum, in this world, that is supposed to advocate for them, that is supposed to help them understand what the purpose of this education and just my experience. I feel like us as an educational institution, the NPS, we've been kind of like false prophets. I'm from Miami originally, a Black eccentric community, and when I went to school and when I interacted with my teachers, I felt equity. I felt included. I felt representation. I felt prioritized. And we talk about that in Minneapolis as that being some of our core principles and what we want to bring to our schools, but it doesn't feel like how I felt when I walked in my school buildings. And I feel like being an extension of these kids' family, I'm letting our kids down, because if I feel it, I know they feel it 10 times more. And I believe a part of our role as Black educators is to extend their concerns, extend their worries, extend those troubles to the higher power. And I think that's what our role as Black educators are. We're beacons of hope for our kids, that education can be a tool to improve your livelihood. I know a lot of our students don't see that for generations in their family, right? Like I have students who never even interacted with somebody in their family that's went to college or has used educational resources as a tool for success. So if we can advocate for them at this level, and make sure that they have everything they need in an equitable way, what hope do they have going out into the real world? So that's what I'm here to kind of create, because I know what that feels like. I know what that looks like. And we're just so far away from it.
Thank you. Minneapolis is not alone in being that far away from it, although it's wonderful to have your perspective of having been in a place where you've seen equity or closer to equity, so you know what it looks like. Given that so many districts are struggling to hire and retain teachers of color, which speaks to the climate not being supportive, what's happening in Minneapolis, and can we spell out what the challenges are today for teachers of color?
The main office.
Yeah, I think for me, the first thing is prioritizing Black educators' voices. And when I say educators, I'm not talking about just teachers. I'm talking about counselors. I'm talking about social workers. I'm talking about our deans, our behavior deans, who have a lot of close relationships with the families, and making sure their voices are prioritized at the table. When we talk about allocating funding, allocating resources, a lot of times that voice is not included, and the decision makers like to deem that those voices are prioritized, but I tend to believe that you can't prioritize voices without having representation included. That voice matters. And we see for the last decade that we seem to rotate spots as some of the last states in the country for the graduation gap. Our Black students are performing at some of the worst in the country. So I think the first step to that is having not only retaining teachers of color and educators of color who are in our schools, but also prioritizing their voices, having site councils for our Black educators monthly, having opportunities to where we can, prioritize some of the values and what's needed in our schools. It can't be a one-man army or a one-band show. It has to be collectivized, and it has to be an opportunity to where our teachers, especially over North, who are, in the trenches, have an opportunity to, speak truth to what's going on in our schools. And I believe, it's an opportunity for me and Charles to speak to that on this platform. And not only with this platform, but being a part of union leadership, we can ensure that.
And I would just great point, Steve. As always, you're always spot on. I would just like to add to that. A part of it is hearing the voice, but it's in the overall treatment and the respect that teachers of color don't feel. And that sounds like a blanket statement, but if we went person by person and asked how they felt about how they're treated by the union and the district, I'm quite confident that I will be proven correct. How the district goes about prioritizing it, like Steve was saying, there are programs that can lead teachers. Let's say behavior dean who has aspirations to become a teacher. That was a role that I was in prior to going back to get my teacher's license. And had it not been for the support of my administrator and some other people, I may not have gone back to school to pursue my teacher's license. So to have administrators of color who have gone through and they have the knowledge and the experience to identify employees, no matter what their role is, that can be effective in the classroom or find other ways. Maybe it's not teaching, maybe it is being a social worker or a counselor, but our administrators can see those skill sets within a person and then encourage them to do so. And for the district to then prioritize those people as high candidates. These are people who we need to get trained. We need to invest. I'm talking about investment in people so that then they can turn around, come back to the district as people who are committed to those who are committed to them. So I'm saying that if the district shows true commitment, the teachers of color will show up. And if we're supported and if people are given avenues, whether it's the grow your own type of program or whatever that is, allow people to move through the organization to become better and a bigger factor in our students' lives. Another thing is, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Another thing other than the investment is to, we got hearing their voices, we have the investment, and then now it's the hiring practices, I'm losing my train of thought now. The process for applying for open positions, interview and select is what I was thinking. So to have that, and if we have predominantly, for example, white teachers in Minneapolis, if we're going to only look at the top 4 senior teachers, then that's that recycling of people that was mentioned earlier. So if a teacher loses their job for whatever reason, and then we're only going to look at the 4 senior teachers. Well, we know in Minneapolis, those are going to be white people and mainly white women. Not to say that they don't do a good job. That's not at all what we're saying, but what we're looking at is what's going to be the biggest impact for our students. And that is people that they can relate to, that resemble them, that can relate to their upbringing. So to kind of be mindful of those things as we're looking for candidates to teach, to counsel, to social work with our students is more humane to me, and it's done in a way that shows true intent to improve the lives of our students.
And to add to that, Charles, I want to speak, in case we have members listening. I think things to order the steps and order the process to do that, we want to talk about compensation. All right, that was big language in our strike that we were pursuing that we didn't necessarily achieve to the highest portion, or that we were told that we were going to achieve. So improving, compensation for teachers, beginning teachers, incentivizing and creating contract language, improving contract language around retaining teachers of color, and not just, making it an incentive-based, practice, or, a consideration. Is the word I'm looking for, but holding the district accountable to contract language that enforces, the hiring and retaining of teachers of color. I think for our members, those are 2 things that we must continue to fight for. Those are 2 things that we must, not waver on, because if we want to see our schools improve, Those are the things that are going to make people want to, be a part of our district. Those are things that are going to make wonderful teachers of color who have left our district to go teach in other districts want to stay. And I encourage all of our members to join, in fighting for those proper amendments.
Talk to me a little bit about what just happened in the Minneapolis teacher strike and how that plays into the issues of hiring and retention for teachers of color.
Yeah, so I think overall, when the strike was, talked about, and a lot of the sites that were rallied behind the strike rallied around our union leadership, we were promised that there was going to be a steadfast fight around contractual language for protections of color. There was word that in the meetings, all right, in the negotiations, that came off the table several times. In the end, we did get an AOA regarding, teachers of color and retaining teachers of color, but seniority was also aligned with the AOA. So it's more, like I said, like a consideration versus contractual binding. That this is the plan for us to retain teachers of color. This is the plan for us to prioritize the retention of teachers of colors over seniority, because we know that is the practice that dismisses and excesses a lot of our teachers of color who are in early years of teaching. A lot of those that don't get tenured. If you want to look at the number, we have 3,000 teachers in NPS. Only 286 are Black teachers. I mean, that is so disproportionate when you look at the most diversified district in the state. We are, behind the eight ball on retention, so I think if it's, like I said, a priority for our district to improve the statistics of how our Black students perform, that they have to hold themselves accountable. And we have to hold them accountable to not only protect and retain our teachers of color, but to, have our voices at the table when it comes to making decisions about, our schools and our communities, and involving the community more. We have to get back to, these grassroots organizations who are in the trenches with these kids, the adults that are in community with these kids, protecting these kids when they're not on our buildings, and inviting their voices back into our spaces and to our schools, and making sure that they also have a seat at the table. Because if we can unite and become aligned, we can protect, what education is supposed to mean for all students.
Steve, you summed it up. That pretty much covers it. I don't know. I don't really have much to add to that. That was very well said, and it was point on. Not to just beat a dead horse, but those are the type of things that the Coalition for Truth is what we're seeking. This is what we want, and that's what we're really working hard to hopefully achieve.
And I mean, you're speaking to somebody, and I could just be fully transparent. I had zero union involvement before this year. As far as, I mean, I paid my dues, and I kind of just understood what the purpose of the union. If you had a grievance, or you had an issue at work, to contact them. But you talk about a site where our students were the most adversely students affected by COVID. They've been facing disruptions of 2 years, already so many grade levels behind. And then we have a strike in the name of, getting those students the proper, I don't want to say a strong word like reparations, but kind of like reparations for their counterparts as teachers. And, they ended up getting a longer school year into the summer, or longer school day, a lot of less resources. I mean, I'm thinking about my site. We didn't gain any mental health support. The class cap sizes didn't affect us tremendously. The CDD, which was put in place, has, being that students are not coming to our school and going other places, has reduced the funding. We lost teachers of color due to excess because there was no protections already aligned. So all these things just kind of made, what we were dealing with a lot worse. And it's time for us to just step up, and put our hats, where our voices are, and make sure we stand up for change and actually utilize, our platform and utilize our voices. We just can't say it anymore.
And just Steve, you just
So,
reminded me of something else that I wanted just to share for people to think about is before the strike, there was already budget cuts and buildings were already having to make cuts and lay people off or excess people. And a great number of those people are and were people of color. Now coming out of the strike, we have to, schools, buildings have to reopen their budgets and cut more. And only people of color are going to be impacted again. So there are some people who prior to the strike were not accessed. Coming out of the strike with the budget being reopened again, now they're going to lose their position. So we lost people of color in the first round of accessing after the strike. Now we're going to lose another round of people who are going to lose their jobs, who are student facing, impacting people. And that's something else we need to think about. We need to invest in the people who are front and center with our students. Those are the people who need the support, they need the resources, they need to know that they're appreciated and that the district and the union is going to support them and fight for what they need in order to do this difficult job. Because coming in here every day with these students is not easy. And we do it, we want to do it, we enjoy what we do, but there still has to be some equity in that.
thank you. So, talk to me about what you want to see out of union leadership to help move in the direction of greater equity for students and greater job protections for teachers of color and educators of color.
So even to further more than what I want to see, what I want to be a part of, I would say is I want to, my goal, I talked to Charles about this, is a year from now, when we're back at the table, or 2 years, when whenever we're back at the table negotiating a new TA, hopefully avoiding a strike. Two, creating a collectivized partnership with our district and our union that is actively seeking out contract protections for teachers of color, an incentivized salary schedule or improved salary schedule, I'm sorry, that, encourages teachers of color to want to be a part of our district, because when we look at suburban districts surrounding, they pay more. A different type of recruiting plan to, recruit teachers of color. Charles talked about improving, some type of track to improve employment status. If you start off as a dean, there's a track to, provide you, a licensure curriculum that the district might want to pay for or finance to help you get your teacher practicum, get that completed. Moving our teachers to admin positions. Just trying to create structures that don't only speak equity, but provide equity. I think that's the biggest thing for me, is being a part of that and just creating some collaboration. I think our biggest hope right now is that we can go to this state and get some of this, surplus, right? And we can't do that with adversarial energy because we look messy. We look, disjointed. We look like that if the money was to come, we wouldn't know what to do with it. So I want to create some collaboration, effective partnerships with our union and our district to actually start spending our time brainstorming on plausible and applicable ideas versus tearing each other down.
And again, I 100% agree with Steve, especially on this point around the collaboration that it's going to take. This isn't a one team or one entity job. This is going to take the district, is going to take our union leadership, is going to take the community, is going to take parents, it's going to take students, it's going to take teachers, it's going to take everybody, because the future for our kids and their education is dire. It's not good. The future does not look bright for our students. And that's a reality that we have to take it personally, because we're responsible. We are the ones who are responsible for changing this situation for our kids, and we're not doing it. One thing that I would like to see from union leadership is transparency. Through my conversations with a lot of other union members, there came a point where people were unsure of exactly what was going on. And when you invest your livelihood into something and you're willing to go without pay in order to achieve something, and then you realize, I don't really know what's going on. clear as to who's doing what. Are my needs and the members' needs, are they what we're really talking about? Are those the things that are going on? What conversations are being had in these closed door meetings? So for me, I think when people know what's going on, they invest more, they feel more a part of, and they give more because they feel like they're respected, their word is heard, and we understand everybody's not going to get what they want. But at the end of the day, we all deserve to be heard. It's just a simple respect that if union dues paying members have something to say, they shouldn't be silenced. They shouldn't be cut off. They should be allowed to speak their piece. They're doing their jobs. So for me, the transparency of how the union business is conducted, transparency there, and collaboration between all the other entities that are important and vital for us to make change.
Thank you. Tell me a little bit more, Charles, about like the entire group, like your whole slate. Like, how did you come together? What are the fundamental principles that you're trying to promote? Just kind of give me a picture, since I'm not from Minneapolis.
How we came together. That's a story in itself. We're a group of individual educators who we had met at like I met our Alexis Mann, who's running for union president. I met her at a training for special education students, and there were some things shared at the training, and we both kind of was like, wow, we picked each other's brains for a little bit. I like some of the things she had to say. She liked some of the things I had to say. So we just kind of stayed in touch with that. And then when this opportunity came, after discussing what we felt we did not like about union leadership and how the strike was conducted primarily, it became a point of someone has to do something. We cannot let the status quo continue to go without a fight. We have to say and let people know that there is another option. There are other thoughts. There is another mindset on how we can accomplish the things that we're trying to accomplish. So I think that's what's brought us together. There are members of our group who work at Henry High School, which is a high school here in Minneapolis, and many other staff there felt like they were not treated and respected the way they should have been as Black educators, asking to have a meeting with union leadership to answer some questions and get clarity as far as what was going to be discussed and arbitrated in the contract. So those are just a few of the things that are kind of not okay. We just again we just have to be better. We have to be better for our students. The city is going to fail. It's not going to be a good place to live if we continue to not have students be successful in school and become productive citizens in our communities.
Thank you. Stephen, you're newer in the profession, and I wonder, so you got fired up in the wake of the strike and like where the lack of transparency around how we're going to handle layoff and excess, and are we really committed to keeping educators of color in Minneapolis? I wonder if you'd like to talk for a minute about how you see the work you're doing in the context of the larger union movement that's happening across the country in Red for Ed, and some of the different ways that unions are trying to bring in a more social justice orientation.
I think for me, my youth allows for me to let other educators know who have, provided, rhetoric around the urge to not be a part of education, the love for students, the love for education, but the reluctance to provide their service because of things like pay, because of things like lack of social justice, because of lack of support. I think being younger and standing up and using my voice to speak out for that could encourage other people like myself, sisters and brothers, and people of all different races who have at least to my knowledge expressed the not wanting to be a part of education at this level. Try to encourage and motivate them to do this work and provide their voice to a space that is needed. I believe having youthful teachers in the classroom provides a different spark, provides a different spirit. We are able to relate to a lot of things that the kids are currently going to. The biggest, spark of our social, equity and social justice in this country has came from the youth. So being able to speak truth to power, being able to organize, being able to advocate for yourself, the best way to, teach is by example. And if I could, stand on the mountain and join a leadership team that tries to, create a culture and create, some type of atmosphere to where we invite youthful teachers and invite teachers who have, decided to go pursue, privatized, businesses or work in HR or go work in IT, that have a love for the kids, that have a love for community and seek to, scratch that itch, but don't see an entry point or don't see a reason to do that. Don't feel, necessarily prioritized or necessarily feel needed. If I can be that beacon, I would love to do that.
Thank you both for sharing your motivations and your inspiring stories with us. Before we close out, I just want to give each of you a last chance to let folks know, whether they're in Minneapolis or beyond Minneapolis, what do you want them to know this week as teachers are going to the polls and voting for new leadership of the Minneapolis Teachers Union?
I kind of touched on it a few minutes ago, and just that we want what's best for our students, and that's why we're doing this. This is for us. This is all about our students. We have no aspirations for anything more than improving the educational outcomes for our students and the working conditions for the adults that provide the services to these students. It's not easy. It's an uphill battle. There has to be a lot of change. People have to really look inside themselves and decide for themselves, how bad do you really want real change? We talk about change a lot, but then we don't put things in place and we don't move ourselves to places where we can accept change. Change looks different. Change sounds different. Change is not what you're used to. That's why it's change, but that doesn't mean it's bad. And at this point, we have fresh ideas. We have people with energy and a willingness to be collaborative and inclusive, and to fight for what's best for our kids. That's what I would like to share in closing.
And I would encourage members to just think about the children. Think about the reason you went to the picket lines. Think about the reason that you advocated and used your voice to stand up and advocate for what was right. Think about all the things that we want to get and we didn't get. Think about being able to, not be exhausted, not be fatigued at the table next time around. If you want to embody all of those things, we are the people that would love to represent you and should be representing you. Think about your communities that are affected by our education and the failing of our education system to kids of color. We are the people here. We are the coalition that is going to make sure that we fight tooth and nail to get the things that we deserve for our students. So I just encourage our members to, definitely think about that and actually, make sure, that they go out and vote.
Charles, Stephen, thank you again for making the time to talk with us. We look forward to seeing how things turn out, and we know that you'll continue to raise your voices and demonstrate leadership in Minneapolis, no matter the results. Thanks for taking the time.
Thanks for